The early 80s were a burgeoning time of creativity and enthusiasm for many RPGs we still enjoy today. One in particular got almost a decade of filling out through a series of articles in Dragon magazine, and you bet we're going to talk about it today. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another Tabletop Tuesday, the show where we discuss all the wonderful games that have enhanced our lives throughout the years. Now, the past couple of weeks, we've been diving into the Marvel Superheroes FASERIP system, mostly the advanced set, as that's the one I know and play. We've covered the base set with its player's handbook and judge's handbook. We dove into the accessory of Ultimate Powers book, and we covered Kim Eastland's Realms of Magic last week. I had considered switching gears this week to another game just to keep things interesting, but what I actually found interesting was a comment by a fan of the channel about a series of articles that had touched on the phaser-up system, something I think I was very dimly aware of from my childhood. And yeah, since it's been a few decades since then, I guess I can be forgiven for having lost track of these, but I digress. The articles in question are called the Marvel-Phile, and they're not the only series of articles out there covering the FASERIP system, but they're the ones we're going to be homing in on today. Now, the Marvel-Phile was a column in Dragon magazine by Jeff Grubb, a name instantly familiar to any old school gamer, I'll wager. The first appearance happened all the way back in August of 1984 with Dragon issue number 88. The column ran 78 issues with its last appearance in October of 1993 with Dragon issue number 198. Grubb set the stage quickly, covering stats for Thor, Loki, and an obscure troll character named Ulik. This would be the tone for the column. Things known, and things probably wouldn't have ever gotten any attention otherwise. It made for an eclectic and fascinating series of articles as you were never quite sure what old Jeff would pull out the next month. But getting back to the column, Grubb presented not just stats, but also a bit of a primer on each character. Background, history, and a Cliff Notes version of the character drives did a wonderful job of making the reader fully familiar with a superhero or villain, and they may never have encountered before. This goes a long way to showing not only Grubb's mission back in the early 80s, but also TSR's. They'd managed to snag the license for one of the biggest comic book producers out there. Not content to sit on those laurels, they put in the effort to produce a game that would endure for decades. And they approached the material with the respect and admiration of a fan, not just a corporation. As a bit of a tangent, that's really one of the biggest and most important aspects of the RPG scene back in the day. The material was presented through the eyes of not only a gaming company, but also fans of the material as well. This really sets things apart. With the increasing trend of pumping out content that sees its consumers as a ready ATM, this was different. Plus, the fact it's kept me entertained for decades speaks volumes as well. But anywho, tangent over. This steady stream of new stats and character bios went a long way to filling out the FASERIP system, and the Marvel Universe by extension. Just boatloads of characters crowding every corner. It was impossible to run out of stuff to enjoy. And putting Grubb at the helm of this was the right move, at least in my opinion. As the designer for the FASERIP system, it showed not only the dedication to the material, but also an enthusiasm to keep it going, keep it evolving, keep the universe expanding ever further. That kind of devotion attracts followers after all, and I am absolutely in that boat, as I'm sure many watching this video are as well. As an interesting side note, I kind of wonder how much of a bridge this column, and by extension this game system, was for those who enjoyed it. For example, how many strictly comic book fans got into gaming because of the FASERIP and the Marvel-Phile, and how many gamers got into comics because of the same? And look how far this has all come. Thor and Loki are now household names, thanks to the popularity of the MCU. Could Grubb have imagined how far his gaming information would go? It's fascinating. But back on topic, though. The Marvel-Phile didn't just contribute stat blocks either. While I don't have an exhaustive knowledge of the material therein, I do know there were articles on evolving combat damage to high-tech suits of armor and what that ongoing damage meant, like, malfunctioning systems and minus column shifts to various stats and so on. There were articles on street-level origins, non-powered characters that carried out justice in the streets, Punisher, etc., etc. There were articles on drugs and alcohol, which is a pretty important theme that often gets buried behind the taboo nature of the topic in today's media. However, let's recall that Tony Stark himself battled alcoholism, and addiction was a theme at the heart of characters like Cloak and Dagger, as well as many others. If the theme is right for a player character, these aspects can add a boatload of RP and drama for what otherwise might be a simple punch villain in the face campaign. The legacy of the Marvel-Phile lives on, and I can't say I'm surprised. With the usual discussions on classic Marvel Forever, there's also a 94-issue periodic post titled The New Marvel-Phile that carried on the tradition not only with its almost 100-issue run, but also 4 yearly annuals beginning in 2018. Seeing folks carrying that torch for years and just about 100 issues goes to show how much of an impact these articles had and continue to have on stalwarts still playing the FASERIP system. Could Grubb have imagined the legacy he spun, or was he simply approaching the material as we all do, as fans? Probably more the latter than the former, if I were to guess, but we're waxing a little poetic here, and that means I've likely said all there is to say at this time, and time to wrap this up. So there you have it, folks, the Marvel-Phile, almost a decade of both well-known and obscure character stats, information, discussions on tons of rules and rulings, guidance, and so much more. Absolutely worth checking out. Also, very easy to obtain. Once again, if you're poor, you can find yourself a copy of a compilation of Marvel-Phile on Classic Marvel Forever. So check that out if you're looking to save money. However, if you'd rather have your physical media, something I strongly encourage, obviously you can print out a PDF copy from Classic Marvel Forever, but also the original Dragon magazines aren't going for too awfully much there on eBay and elsewhere. Last time I glanced, I have half a hankering to go through my stack upstairs and see which ones I actually have. So I'll cut this short before I start old man rambling. Thank you one and all for stopping by, giving me a moment of your time. I appreciate you. Now, it's Tuesday, folks. Get out there, roll some dice of your own today. Gather around that table, make those memories. While you're at it, pop in a good movie, watch a cartoon, read a comic, drink a little water, and get some exercise. And as always, have a good one.